Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my honor to welcome you to today's event, Preparing the Future of Industrialization, UNIDO's Vision 2050, and the launch of the Industrial Development Report 2026. My name is Jaime Moll, and I am the Director of UNIDO's Division of Strategic Programming, Results Monitoring, and Quality Assurance, and I will be moderating this event this afternoon. As you all know, the world is entering a period of unprecedented transformation, one that brings in challenges, but also unprecedented opportunities for inclusive and sustainable development. Poverty, hunger, and unemployment remain big concerns, and inequality, resource depletion, and climate change continue to demand urgent action. At the same time, we witness powerful new forces that are reshaping the global industrial landscape. Digitalization, automation, evolving trade patterns, and the transition to cleaner and more circular production systems are unlocking new avenues for innovation, resilience, and shared prosperity. Together, all these shifts call for bold rethinking of development and for a renewed understanding of the pivotal role that industry plays in it. It is against this background that our event is taking place this afternoon. The event will be structured into two parts. In the first part, we will listen to the vision of UNIDO on the future of industries. That will be backed by a short intervention presentation by Professor Kaplinski, who will be underscoring why, in terms of industrial development, business as usual is not any longer an option. Then, Ms. Cecilia Ugaz Estrada, Deputy to the Director General and Managing Director of UNIDO, will present the key messages and findings emanating from UNIDO's flagship report, the Industrial Development Report 2026. She will highlight the current state of industry and the pathways for its future development. In the second part, we will have a high-level panel discussion, don't miss that one, featuring leading experts and members of the government, international organizations, and academia. They will explore the core issues arising from the Director General's vision and from the analysis that is contained in the Industrial Development Report. The discussion will then be followed by a short session of questions and answers, so get ready for that. Without any further ado, I have the honor to invite Ms. Cecilia Ugaz Estrada to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of UNIDO's Director General, Mr. Gerd Müller. Ms. Ugaz Estrada, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jaime. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. Our Director General has entrusted me to deliver his opening remarks for this session, so allow me please to read his speech. The world needs a new industrial deal. UNIDO has crafted a Vision 2050 for the future of industries for development, an industrial transformation blueprint for people, planet, and prosperity. Our vision is to create a fair global economy in which poverty and hunger are eradicated and where industries create decent jobs, foster innovation, and promote prosperity while protecting people and the planet. By 2050, polluting factories and exploitative practices can give way to intelligent and climate-neutral industrial ecosystems powered by clean energy, safeguarding the workers and preserving the planet for future generations. This vision is built on expert analysis, 4 extensive foresight studies, member states' consultations, and forward-looking projections. We take the long-term perspective, asking what will industries look like in 25 years, how much they transform to be sustainable and inclusive and drive broader development, and how can UNIDO enable our member states to seize the opportunities emerging from the mega trends which are rapidly reshaping both the world and industries, such as demographic shifts, emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, and green energy transitions. Excellencies, Vision 2050 will guide UNIDO's programmatic work in line with the Riyadh Declaration, which I hope to see emerge from the deliberations at this General Conference. It will serve as a foundation for a structured, transparent, and well-governed expansion of UNIDO's efforts in response to your needs. It will also be backed by the analysis and data in our new Industrial Development Report 26, which we are launching here as well today. The IDR outlines two detailed scenarios based on extensive research on how the world could look like in 2050. One scenario shows where we will end up if we stay in our current path and if we don't act now. A world where more than 30% of the global population remains below poverty line and 300 million people going hungry every day. The IDR 2026 shows in the second scenario how, with the right choices, with collective and concerted action, we can steer the global economy on a much more promising course for both people and planet. Ladies and gentlemen, let me highlight some key action areas. The first, bridging the industrial financial gap. Developing countries need private investment for industrialization, not just aid. But the trend is going in the wrong direction. In 2024, foreign direct investment fell by 11%. In developing countries, it dropped by a quarter to a third. UNCTAD reports a drop of up to 30% in the critical sectors of renewable energy, transport, water and sanitation, and agri-food systems. Official development assistance fell by over 7% in 2023 and nearly 10% in 2024, with a further decline of up to 17% projected for 2025. Public funding is not enough. Private investment on the whole new scale is what is necessary, with an investment offensive with the proper financial resources. Taxing financial operations and wealth is one of the most just and sensible options. A tax on financial speculation and translations at 0.01% could raise $250 billion a year. Second, trade and sustainable supply chains. 70% of global trade depends on supply chains. Yet too many of these exclude developing nations from real value creation and limit market access and participation. LDCs account for 13 to 14% of the world's population, but only 1% of global exports. We need a fairer world economy and trade system with social and ecological standards throughout supply chains. UNIDO supports investment in primary production, processing, assembly, and marketing that meet sustainable standards. The benefits are substantial: better jobs and higher incomes, knowledge and technology transfer, and stronger domestic revenues. Third, local value addition, fair and safe deals. Local value addition, transparency, and fair revenue sharing must be at the core of fair globalization. But LDCs are still mostly exporters of commodities and raw materials. Local value addition must become a new standard in our trade. Critical minerals are a key example. Lithium, cobalt, rare earths, and more are vital for green and digital transitions. And global demand of these minerals could increase by up to 500% by 2050. But we must ensure this new resource demand creates opportunities and shared prosperity, not new inequalities. Through the Global Alliance for Responsible and Green Minerals, among others, UNIDO will work with governments and private partners to ensure critical minerals drive fair, local, and green industrialization. Fourth, green energy. Energy is the basis for all development, yet 750 million people still lack basic access to electricity. But the realities of climate change are clear. Record global temperatures over the past years, 1.8 billion people currently affected by drought and more extreme weather. Energy-intensive industries account for 25% of global CO2 emissions. Business as usual is not an option. We need to decarbonize industry, and we know how to do so. We need to scale up electrification, carbon capture, green hydrogen, energy efficiency, and climate adaptation. However, investment in renewable energy in emerging markets and developing countries account for only 10% of those made in advanced economies. We need a massive increase in sustainable energy efficiency investment. Fifth, a smart infrastructure for industrial transformation. Digitalization and AI are revolutionizing our world. Automation and robotics continue to advance rapidly. Yet today, 32% of the world's population still remains offline. We must ensure access for all and bridge digital divides both within and between nations so that everyone can benefit from Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, digital platforms, the Internet of Things, and smart manufacturing can empower businesses in developing countries to participate in the global industrial transition. 6. New greener materials for industry and infrastructure. The extraction and processing of resources, fuels, and food account for around 50% of global CO2 emissions, and for over 90% of biodiversity loss and water stress. We need a new generation of sustainable materials. Green and low-carbon steel is scaling up, also thanks to UNIDO Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative. There is enormous potential in carbon-neutral cement to be biomaterials from sea, plants, proteins, and bioplastics and forest fibers. This means research, technology transfer, and skills development. Especially so, developing countries can also produce and export high-value green materials. Excellencies, UNIDO's Vision 2050 and your forthcoming Riyadh Declaration are not just plans, they are calls to action, and the time to act is now. It is up to us to create a strong and sustainable foundation for the next generations to create economies filled with opportunities. Let us make sure that this future is fair, green, and prosperous for all. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ugaz Estrada, for delivering the opening remarks on behalf of UNIDO's Director General. As I mentioned before, we will now move to a keynote presentation delivered by Professor Kaplinsky of the Institute of Development Studies in the University of Sussex. You heard business as usual is not any longer an option, so the title of his presentation is The Future of Industries, the End of Business as Usual. If we can run the video, please.
Good day to you, everyone. Many apologies that I can't be with you in person. I'm a great admirer of UNIDO. I've worked with it for 50 years, and I'm deeply privileged to be involved in this discussion. I don't have much time, and I have a large territory to cover, so let's go forward. We're going to address the crisis which we're currently facing in all over the world, and in order to do that, we have to go back in history. We have to go back in history to understand that this crisis we're experiencing is not unique. We've had similar occasions in the past which have surfaced in similar ways. So I need to begin first by taking us back in history, and then I need briefly to use that historical agenda to understand why business as usual is no longer possible. If we understand that business as usual is no longer possible, what are the opportunities? And these opportunities are opened up by a new paradigm, the digital paradigm, and from that, we can grasp opportunities to identify policies to create a more sustainable world. And of course, let's not forget, policies need to be implemented. Say something about implementation as well. So let's begin with a bit of history. Since the Industrial Revolution began in the early 18th century, the world economy has passed through 5 what we call techno-economic paradigms. These are long phases of growth between 5 and 8 decades, They tend to have an upswing when the technology is in nascent, when it's extended, and then often associated with a crisis of overexuberance. Once the crisis is seen through, we have a period in which the new technology and the new paradigm is deployed through the system to create a more sustainable world. So briefly, what are the 5 paradigms we're talking about? The first one, beginning in the 1750s, was the introduction of the factory system aided by water power and canals. From about the 1830s, the new wave took over, which was a wave driven by steam power and railways, extending the market from the local to the national level, followed by the third wave from 1870 to 1920, which the introduction of iron and steel, steamships and telegraphy enabled the economy to move from the local, national to the global level. The 20th century was the era of mass production, large-scale production, heavily concentrated plants, and increasingly production and consumption being separated. And in its logical extension, the extreme case is producing in China for consumption all over the world. Now, each of these waves, and these waves are systemic, they're not just around technology or the economy, they involve values, they involve social organization, they involve governance, and have an impact on the environment. After the initial introduction of the technology, we get this period of exuberance and we get the great crash. The tulip boom, the railway boom of the 19th century, the Great Depression of the 1920s and 1930s, and now confronting us in the future is the likelihood of a significant financial meltdown. And once that financial meltdown has worked its way through, we have the opportunity to move to a more sustainable world. And this is the world in which we have the 5th of these techno-economic paradigms. It's the paradigm driven by the digital era. So let's go to the issue of why business as usual is no longer possible. We have a problem on the trade front. Globalization is imploding, and the rules of global trade are in crisis. Number 2, we have a massive social and environmental crisis. Exclusion and precarity are evident and obvious all over the world. Just a small statistic, in Latin America, Africa, and parts of South Asia, outside of agriculture, more than 2/3 of the population earn their livelihoods in the informal sector. And yet the policies we bring to this agenda are policies designed to generate and extend the formal sector. This is a paradigm of exclusion and not one of inclusion. The third reason why business as usual is no longer possible is because we have an accelerating environmental crisis, which is changing the rules of operation, of living, and migrants, people flows in dramatic ways. And then finally, just briefly, we have a changing geopolitical world with the growth of a new hegemon, China and perhaps India at some stage in the future, and the decline of the USA as the prime hegemon. So we've seen the history. We understand why business as usual is no longer possible. Let's talk about taking opportunities, going beyond business as usual. And the phrase we've used for this is beyond catch-up. It is no longer possible or indeed desirable to catch up to the old paradigm because it was a paradigm of exclusion and environmental damage. We have to move to a new paradigm, taking advantage of the new digital era. As I said earlier, each of the previous eras were driven by core technologies, water power, steam power, iron and steel, mass production. And at these periods when the paradigm is exhausted, Schumpeter referred to them as gales of creative destruction. The old is no longer possible, the destruction part. Creation, the taking opportunities with the new paradigm is what's provides the opportunity for a more sustainable world. So the digital era, remember this is not just an era of technology, but also of organization, involves technologies which are more flexible, technologies which produce new products, technologies which descale production, the technologies which displace the concentration of production and power, and technologies which involve changes in lifestyle and ways of living as well. We can see these opportunities in two particular respects. Renewable energy provides the opportunity to generate energy where you need it, and M-Pesa digital money provides for financial exclusion for the mass of the population. Both of these technologies, renewable energy and M-Pesa, are systemic technologies. They affect the way we live, the way we work, our values, and they are critically determined and made possible by the digital technology. So how do we turn these digital tech and the digital era into opportunity? And here's the challenge for UNIDO and the global governance system. Firstly, we have to prioritize the needs of the informal sector and the excluded. Our old instruments of industrial policy are predominantly focused on the formal sector and technologies which are not employment intensive. Secondly, second policy agenda, we have to develop and extend the deployment of the digital technologies right through the economic and the social system. We do that in part by driving the diffusion of technologies through a more and environmentally sustainable world. And as I've said, this is very evident in the case of renewable energy. We have to use these new technologies, these new ways of being and working, to make the most of commodities so that the developing countries are no longer merely producers of unprocessed raw materials. Finally, we need to expand South-South trade. Global trade is increasingly becoming regional trade. South-South trade provides massive opportunities for the industrial sector. So how do we get there? We have to develop a policy framework which moves us beyond policy to implementation. One of the prime theorists of innovation theory said, the rocket science is easy. The rocket science is easy. The issue is to turn big ideas into affecting the way we live and work. We need vision and leadership from government. We need to develop mission-oriented policies so that we bring together parties from across the social policy terrain and the scientific and innovation capabilities. We need to use this to develop the coalition of the willing, to begin with niche innovations, to show what is possible, and to use those innovations to extend them through the economic system so that the new paradigm becomes diffused and gives us a more sustainable world. All this requires the global sharing of ideas, and here's the role for UNIDO and other members of the UN family. We have the possibilities in front of us for a world of creative destruction. We don't want to use these possibilities to move to a world of destructive capabilities. Thank you very much. Good luck to UNIDO and to everyone in the audience.
We thank Professor Kaplinsky for his presentation, and with that I would like to invite Ms. Cecilia Estrada to deliver her keynote presentation, Building Future-Proof Industries to Tackle the Global Challenges, Key Findings and Messages from the Industrial Development Report 2026.
Thank you, Jaime. And allow me to actually thank the Vice Minister for being here. Thank you very much, Excellency, for joining us in this presentation. Okay. I tend to move a little bit too much when I do presentations, but I'll try to sort of keep an eye on the microphone so you can listen to me. Well, this is actually my task here is really to present you the contents of the Industrial Development Report for 2026. I would like first to mention to you, for those who are really new to UNIDO, or it's the first time that you hear this kind of presentation, what is the Industrial Development Report? So the Industrial Development Report is UNIDO's flagship, and we are very proud to announce that today is our 12th edition. The first Industrial Development Report was launched in 2002, and since then it's been an uninterrupted series, and it is actually produced every 2 years. We are talking about a biennial publication. The first Industrial Development Report was about competing through innovation and learning, But since then, the IDR, as has covered all kinds of topics that you can imagine. I mean, we have talked about capacity development, technology transfer. We have really sort of covered a good ground in terms of, what are the main issues that really affect industry, and what are actually the options that, that we can really propose also as UNIDO in terms of policy work. I think I would like really also to highlight that the IDR, of course, is been actually working quite a lot over the past few years, trying to analyze the effects of digitalization and industrialization. I think this is very important. I mean, we had a full report that was published in 2019 talking about the digital age. In 2021, actually, we had, after the COVID-19 pandemic, we also they devoted the whole issue to talk about resilience and the industrialization post-COVID. And our previous IDR in 2024 has been about the new era of industrial policy. As you may all be aware, the industrial policy is a subject that is being really changing constantly, and we are really witnessing also some kind of changing in the paradigm in the way that the countries are really sort of formulating industrial policy in the past years. So our past IDR has been devoted to that. And then we come, and I don't know how to move, yes, to the IDR 2026. So this one, we are basically looking at the future of industrialization, as it was actually mentioned by Professor Kaplinsky during the presentation of the vision to 2050 for UNIDO. We are really concerned about how our industrialization system is going to look like in the next years, taking into consideration all the changes that we are witnessing and all the mega trends that are really affecting economic activity in the past years. We are really sort of focusing on which is the impact on industrialization. So actually our IDR, more than a flagship, is also an advocacy tool, and it's also a very important way that we sort of systematize and do analysis of industrial trends. And also an important point that I would like to highlight is that this year, the IDR has been a key analytical input for the production of the UNIDO's Vision 2050. So you will find, if you ever have the opportunity to see both books, you will see lots of similarities in terms of the reflection. Both documents have really worked together, and the IDR has also provided good basis for the Vision 2050. Okay. Let me just very briefly mention the process, because I think this is also very important. The IDR is, of course, a research product, but it's a research product that is really output of a very collective action. We basically engage with different teams around the world. The IDR is actually presented in several locations. We organized 6 or 7 launches of the book. But, it goes to Latin America, it goes to Asia, it goes to Africa. But at the same time, we use the possibility of presenting the report in order to engage with local research teams or regional teams that actually convey on expert group meetings. And these actually experts are really those who are really our consultative body and really support the effort of research that is also done in-house. So what we're showing there in the pictures is basically all the exchanges that we have with different groups of experts for the preparation of the IDR. Okay, and now let me just go into the topic, because I think I don't know how much time I have, but I think I'm already using a bit too much. Professor Kaplinsky said the current path is unsustainable. So we all know, given the current circumstances, climate change, digital transformation, demographic changes, we all know our path, our growing path is definitely not sustainable. And how do we know that? We say, if we really present ourselves in a scenario that is business as usual, business as usual meaning not taking any policy measures in order to really redirect a little bit the way that industrialization is going. Actually, the results are kind of pretty bad, if I might just say very blunt about it. So we are really talking about a world in 2050 where we will have 3.15 billion people under the poverty line and nearly 700 million people in extreme poverty. We are talking about 32% of the world population under the poverty line and 7% of the global population which are really, really in extreme poverty, which is actually a very bad result. coming actually from a period where, we were a bit more encouraged in terms of poverty reduction all over the world, now we are seeing that we can definitely not only stagnate, but also go backwards. The second quite worrisome indicator is the indicator on hunger. And if we continue business as usual, no other policy, no policies that really can help us, steer, the industrial sector in a different direction or the economy in a different direction, we will have 303 million malnourished people, which is more than 3% of the global population. And of course, finally, climate action. I think long ago we used to talk about the limit of 2 degrees after the the industrial era as being really, really the kind of terrible ceiling that we shouldn't go beyond. And here we are really talking about having an increase in temperature of 2.3 degrees centigrade. So these really are kind of very, very worrisome outputs that we definitely, I think, as global community need to do something about. But let me show you a little bit what is it that we are proposing as UNIDO, right? In any case, also, another very worrisome feature is not only the absolute numbers are bad, but also these results in terms of increases of poverty, increases of hunger, and also the results of climate change will be felt especially by low and lower middle income countries. So even, the bad news are going to be really felt, but only one part of humanity, not but the whole world. And this is also something that we need to be very clear about. So 94% of the people that we are talking that are going to be in extreme poverty are going to be citizens of low and lower middle income countries. 92% will be food insecurity will be felt in particular in the poorest countries. And also 88% of climate-related fatalities are going to be felt in low and lower middle income countries. So this is also a kind of call for us to say, these are inequalities that we cannot accept anymore. Okay, this is also something I also wanted to focus a little bit, and this is the definite need to create stable and high-quality jobs, because that should be a key priority. Professor Kaplinski also in his vision mentioned this. Deal, please, with the informal sector. This is really something that we need to be able to do something about. And actually, we took these kind of numbers in order to also show that, quite unfortunately, women are going to be very, very badly affected if we don't take serious measures in terms of the creation of better jobs and employment. If you see a little bit the tables, I think sometimes the numbers are too small. But what we really see, the points, the orange points are job informality affecting men, and the blue points are informality affecting women. And you see systematically in all the regions of the world, women are those who are working more precisely in the informal sector, and the gap between the job in informal sector that goes to men and women is also growing. And this is also something that we need to be concerned about. This is a clearly policy issue that we ought to be able to solve through proper policy interventions. Okay, solutions, right? Enough from, the kind of bleak pictures. And we are here really to propose you a little bit the consideration that industry can be really the solution through a stronger industrial ecosystems. Why is it that we are saying this? And we are actually focusing on five areas of intervention that are really important for the industrial sector, and we could really see that they can help to solve this, kind of bad outcomes that we have by the business as usual scenario. The first one is manufacturing is responsible of 64 of the growth episodes in the last 50 years. This is actually an indicator that has been worked by our colleagues, our research colleagues in UNIDO. And this basically means that they have been observing, they have basically isolated periods of 8 consecutive years of growth, during the past 50 years. More than 60% of those episodes of growth that are above 2% of GDP actually have been motivated by industrialization. So industrialization is really, really an engine of growth. And this is something that we think is also something that can definitely support any possibility to be able to sort of improve the results of the business as usual scenario. The other thing that we also would like to highlight, if you follow me a little bit on the bottom of the circle, is job creation. I know that many of you have heard that because of the introduction of digital technologies, industry is not longer absorbing enough workforce, let's say. Because before, of course, I mean, we used to see the industrial sector as a big source for jobs. This is maybe yes and maybe no, and let me tell you why. Basically, what we have done as calculations is what is the multiplier effect of job creation in manufacturing. And that multiplier effect is 2. So this means that for every job that is created in manufacturing, you really create 2 more jobs in other sectors of the economy. So manufacturing, although is probably not responsible for the creation of jobs directly, is responsible for the creation of jobs on other sectors. You may tell me, maybe 2 is not big enough, right? But if you compare, this same multiplier effect, actually the calculations being done with the same methodology, the multiplier effect for other sectors is very, very low. I mean, if you take, for instance, sectors as construction, and construction, the multiplier effect is only 1. If you take the service sector, the multiplier effect is 0.7. So actually, we are talking about that the other sectors in the economy that are not manufacturing create much less jobs, by unit of job created in the sector. So I think this is also something that, of course, I mean, I don't know if I'm really being very clear, but I think this is also very important for us to rescue. Manufacturing is very important because it's actually supporting to create jobs, and not only jobs, good quality jobs, not informal jobs. Then, of course, I mean, we are talking about, the importance of manufacturing for climate action. So we have, for instance, that the manufacturing sector has 60% of green patents worldwide. So it has a very important component of research and development. Also, we have proof, and actually you can see that on the industrial development report that I mentioned before. Countries with robust industrial sectors, they have been better able to actually resist, the problems that were caused by COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, for instance, manufacturing also accounts for 50% of global research and development activities. So it's really like a hub where you can really, you can really feel that there is innovation in the economy, and that has multiplier effects that are very important. Let me see. Okay. We were talking about business as usual is, of course, not longer possible. We are talking about how industrialization and manufacturing can help, in order to be able to more or less sort of move, and help to have better outputs in the long run. But we also have to take into consideration that there are these mega trends that are affecting the process of industrialization all over the world. And this is also something that for us as UNIDO is important, because we are very aware that, for our member states, these are things that are actually either I would say, supporting or preventing our member states to be able to establish, a long-run path towards industrialization, sustainable and inclusive industrialization. The megatrends, I think maybe some of you are familiar with. We have, I better read from here. We have energy and the green transition. So all the investments that are currently taking place, in the energy sector. We have the rise of artificial intelligence and digitalization in production. We have global supply chains reconfiguration. We have food production systems and transformation. And we have the population growth and changing the nature of work. So basically, these megatrends are, of course, affecting, the way that industrialization is proceeding all over the world. Nevertheless, we would like also, and this is also part of the analysis that I've been performing in our research team, we would like to turn also these challenges into opportunities. And then we have distinguished 7 areas of action. So we feel that, if there are some policy interventions in the 7 areas I'm going to be mentioning now, this can actually support a little bit the way that we can correct the course of industrialization, and in particular, try to mitigate a little bit the bad results in the 2050. So the areas are basically 7, and we are talking about, on that direction: infrastructure, institutions, labor force, technology, finance and investment, greening production, trade and integration. But I think it will probably be a bit more clear if I can show you some of the indicators that we are using in order to measure that. Here, first of all, for each of the 7 areas that I mentioned before, we are basically highlighting 2 indicators. These 2 indicators are, okay. They are actually those who can really sort of summarize a little bit the behavior of these, 7 areas of intervention. For instance, in the case of governance, we are basically measuring government effectiveness and political stability, so the first 2 blue that we have there. Everything that has to do with technology, we are measuring the research and development and scientific research. We are also, for instance, talking about access to electricity and 5G coverage, because this is also something that is quite important for our member states. Access to electricity is actually a precondition for industrialization. So it's important that we also have that kind of precondition in order for the countries to be able to evolve towards a more sustainable path. In this graphic, what we are really trying to show is that there is basically a frontier. What we see there as a half circle is a frontier. And the frontier is being provided by the behavior of the best performer in the world. So what we see in this graphic is a little bit of a baseline. How do especially developing countries are basically faring with respect, to the frontier? How are they behaving? All these areas of intervention, how do they look like? And you see, in most of the cases, they are quite below even half of what the best performance in the world are doing. So these give us really, I would say, really a hint that there's lots of work that we need to do in these particular topics if we really want to have a more sustainable and industrialization path. Okay, so this is actually a little bit like the conclusion, or I would say the core of the report. We say, okay, we are talking about basically 2 kinds of scenarios that are going to take us to the 2050. So how the industry is going to look like, what is it that we can do, and what are the outputs that our industrialization is going to deliver, in 2050 if we take certain measures. In the first one, we have a current scenario, as I was defining it before. So it's a little bit business as usual, trying to really sort of follow the path, the way that we are going on now, and that we know is pretty unsustainable. So you can really see that this is definitely not optimal, right? It's the blue line that goes, sort of towards the low range. Nevertheless, we also have, the team also tried to provide some alternative scenarios. And then among alternative scenarios, we have 2. One is what we call the industrialization push, and the second one is the clean energy and just industrialization push, and I will try to explain that a little bit further. Industrialization push is basically, let's try to improve, what we saw before the areas of intervention, those 7 points, let's try to make it better, and let's try to move on with that. And basically what we get is an alternative scenario that, although delivers much better results, is still unsustainable in the sense that it's not really reducing carbon emissions. So that's why the second scenario is a scenario which is far more ambitious. It's a scenario that is really trying to make what we say inclusive and sustainable industrialization. Inclusive in the sense that policies that are contemplated, as part of the, of the package in order to advance industrialization also include social policies, so also include measures in order to make it more inclusive, including, gender analysis, lots of things that, for instance, the work on with informal sector, and also, more and better targeted clean energy investments. And this second scenario is the scenario that actually at the end, not surprisingly, delivers much better results. So if you allow me, okay. So this is basically what would happen if we really sort of follow a trajectory on which we are not only not being business as usual, we are also including, 7 areas of policy that can definitely support industrialization, but on top of that, we are also taking some measures in terms of social policy and better targeting clean energy and sustainability. So for instance, the numbers change quite a lot. We have let me read it here. Yeah. We have 525 million fewer people living in poverty and 150 million in extreme poverty, so this is less. We have 52 million fewer people facing hunger. We have 25 higher GDP per capita in several countries, and we have also an increase of manufacturing value added at around 60%, which is quite a lot, even considering what we are having as targets for the SG9. And we have, in terms of climate action, a decrease by 6% of global emissions annually. So I just wanted to basically sort of present this to you because I think it's extremely important to say, sustainability and inclusiveness in industry is not something that we can, countries can basically achieve individually. This is at the same time as, Professor Kaplinsky was also saying, a call for action, but it's a call for collective action. We definitely need to make sure that we are, that countries can really contribute to each other, there can really be exchange of best practices, also exchange of knowledge and know-how, because this is something that is really, we are creating a public good. And this is something that, definitely is a call to try to basically make more cooperation across countries. One of the things that I also think is extremely important is basically to highlight, we started talking about hunger, we started talking about clean energy, and we started about the sustainability of supply chains. And these currently are the priorities that UNIDO have, programmatic priorities that UNIDO have for the next 4 years. This is also, something that is part of this call for action, because we really want as an organization to contribute basically to have better outcomes in the future, and especially to support our member states to really be able to start in a path of industrialization that is not only sustainable but also inclusive. And I think I'll leave it there, Jaime. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Estrada, for this enlightening presentation. We heard about UNIDO vision, about the way countries can make use of industrial development to develop. We also heard about the future trends and how to use them to support sustainable development. And that will be at the core of the panel discussion, the high-level panel discussion that we are about to embark. We are honored to have leading personalities and experts in the field, and I'm sure they will help us to unpack some of the messages that Ms. Ugaz Estrada introduced in her presentation. So, with your permission, allow me to introduce our high-level panelists. It is my great honor, and as I will be introducing themselves, I will be inviting them to join me in the podium. First, we have His Excellency, Mr. Khalil Ibrahim Ibn Salamah, who serves as the Vice Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources for Industrial Affairs in Saudi Arabia. He has more than 3 decades of experience in industry and chemicals. He has been a driving force in advancing the kingdom's industrial transformation agenda. So, Your Excellency, welcome. I would like now to invite Mr. Luis Felipe Giesteira, who is the Deputy Secretary of Industrial Development, Innovation, Trade and Services in the Ministry of Development, Industry, Trade and Services in Brazil. Mr. Giesteira, please welcome to the podium. Next, Ms. Lily Yang Ng, who is the Lead Advisor for Southeast Asia at the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, as well as the Secretary General of the International Economic Association. And in 2022, she co-edited a book with Danny Rodrik, New Normal, New Technologies, New Financing for the G20 in Indonesia. And finally, allow me to welcome and to ask him to join us, Mr. Justin Hauge. I hope I got it right this time because I keep pronouncing that name wrongly, who is Assistant Professor in Development Studies at the University of Cambridge, and he has recently published a very timely, for our discussion, book, The Future of the Factory, How Megatrends Are Changing Industrialization. So we have a great panel. Let's make the best use of the time we have. Allow me to start with His Excellency. So I would like to pose the first question. We heard a lot about business as usual is not any longer an option for industrial development. Your Excellency, what bold policy shifts must developing countries take to leapfrog, not just to catch up, to frontier industries? And also, based on your great experience, what is the role that you think UNIDO could play in supporting governments towards this end and take the necessary political risks immediately and for the future, Your Excellency?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So just maybe a short while before the evening. So maybe to establish, I would say, a fact that will impact my some of the suggestions. What we're talking about here is not really a new product that the industry requires. It will be the same product, the same food, the same machine. We're talking about how we can make them in a different way. So what this tells us is that innovation will be a key part to keep competitiveness always alive in our head. It is not manufacturing by itself is the driver. It will be adaptation to either a new manufacturing techniques or adaptation for a market reach or adaptation of utilization and manufacturing excellence. So there is a big shift in industry. It is not a shift in product, it's a shift on how to reach that product. This is where additive manufacturing, 3D printing, green initiative that has to be all embedded within the approach. This is one. When we talk about green first, this is a big title. But when we slice it to what actually can be done, we find out a green product is composed of many initiatives, a green energy source, or a green component to build the factory, or a green raw material, or even saving, increasing efficiency, so a better utilization of raw material. All of this combined is a green or a clean manufacturing. So it is becoming now an attitude rather than just a big title. Having said that, now let's talk about reality, what is happening around us in the world. And best to be illustrated by examples. A biomedicine, all what comes to our mind is a bioreactor. If I tell you the new innovation is to produce that biomedicine by plants, and plants basically is our nature bioreactor. Small in scale, delivers the right biomedicine. Is still in research, some piloted, but it is always a breakthrough that can be scaled up, can be also shared with so many deprived nations currently from this, I would say, basic necessity access to such product. Another example, and we have put through also a journey in this conference when we talked about the potato journey. And by the way, we selected a crop that all of us eat it every day, almost, or at least once a week. It is very easy to plant. We are used to it. We know what it does. We buy it. We cook it. But have we looked at it from an economical point of view, where a combination of policy-driven initiative by government, a policy-driven for a water utilization, specific product that can be monetized to a GDP growth. I'll share with you numbers in Saudi Arabia. Currently, we import about 2.9 billion riyals worth of frozen potatoes. With this simple measure, Ministry of Water said no water consumption. Water is very scarce in Saudi Arabia. We said, okay, how much is little? We agreed on a number. Then you find the pivot or the drip technology, whatever works. Then you plant it. Then you harvest it. Then you industrialize it. Suddenly, now it becomes a 7 billion riyals from a deficit of 2.9 to a positive of 7 billion. For a country that is desert in nature in Saudi Arabia, this is a remarkable achievement. In my view, this is why we put it there. A policy can intervene very positively to the nation. Where would the UNIDO play a role? I said, now, okay, we are at a country. We don't have the reach of the UNIDO. What we can do is package that deal from a policy to market access to putting all the elements together, from the seeds to the equipment, to the training the people, to the type of potato, to the market access, until you reach a marketable product that can bring money, can create jobs, can serve also the hunger, can create a good resilience for country. What we can do, we can align with the UNIDO, but the burden is on UNIDO, not on us. We will help. You bring the countries who can benefit. We will come to the countries who are in need, where we will put these on action. The other one, I would say, always UNIDO is the best showcase where at least the politics is always de-risked. The access to the fund that is required with the UNIDO umbrella, de-risking the risk of financiers, or the better way for grants to be better mobilized. So in a summary, this is, I think, where the industry is redefined, is more competitiveness look than just manufacturing, a combination of policy of how to make the product, always innovate, and then packaging them and sharing them with the different countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Allow me now to move to my neighbor in the podium, Mr. Gesteira, and I'd like to invite you to share with us how you think we could ensure that finance for science and technology for developing countries, and how we ensure that this is more widely shared, supporting the development of a strong industrial ecosystems. And also, how is the new industrial policy in Brazil trying to support domestic industries, master critical technologies, we heard about that in the first intervention, for the future of industrialization in the country. Mr. Gesteira, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Jaime. Yes, I think that's important to start with a little context. Brazil has a medium-sized national system of innovation. We are at 1.2% of GDP invested in research and development, which puts Brazil in we are the second highest R&D intensity over GDP in the BRICS group. So we are not at a very high position, but we are not at a very low position also. If you look at the technology, science and technology complexity ranking by Cesar Hidalgo, I think Brazil ranks in a position that shows that we have a very diversified national system of innovation, if I can say in these terms. So we are not a very concentrated, we don't have a very concentrated system when it comes to incentives, government incentives. But I think that a very peculiar feature of our system is that more than a half of the total spending is made by the governments, both federal and states governments. So it's something like 0.6% of GDP, which even compared to the largest part of developed countries, it's significant. Okay, we are talking about something like $14 billion that's spent directly by the government. When, of course, when it comes to the finance, the funding of this, it's a much higher level. So we are not talking at a very easy thing to be done, because even though Brazil is not figuring very high in the patent ranking, for example, 25th in the global rank, so it's a difficult thing to do. It's both expensive, and even if you spend lots of money on that, it's no guarantee that you, in fact, make the learning machine, the knowledge economy machine start to work. When it comes to results in terms of critical technologies, when we look at the new Industry Brazil, which is our current industrial policy, we have some products, some sectors, some technologies that we are more focused on. I think the more important thing to say is that we are being reasonably successful when it comes to laboratory activity. So some of those technologies, for example, semiconductor, biofuels, permanent magnets, we are doing pretty well when we look at the labs. But it's being very difficult to make it becomes true business. So we could say that it's not easy to build a national system of innovation, but it's something that we are, it's at the arm's length, we could say. But the most difficult part of it is to really make the demo part of it works. So besides being able to supply, to offer some of those new technologies, a very important part of what you have to do to make the engine truly works is somehow make industry, the companies, being interested in those technologies. And the best I can say in a few minutes is that you have to coordinate the industrial policy to do that with the science and technology policy. And we're trying it very hard, but it's a work in progress, I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gesteiro, for sharing the experience of Brazil in the way of mastering those critical technologies, and particularly for highlighting the need to ensure that link between industrial policy in general and the specific policy targeting the introduction of such technologies. Allow me now to move to Ms. Lily Yang-in. We heard about the rise of artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies. We heard about the possibilities, but also the risks that entails. And I would like to invite you to share with us your ideas about the way developing countries can deal with the concentration of artificial intelligence in a handful set of countries and firms, and what can they do to overcome that concentration.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's really a pleasure to be in the land of the home of the faith of Islam. And it's really interesting to see how it has been growing from an oil-rich nation to become a regional hub of innovations of AI and green transitions. Before I address your questions, let me share with you two simple observations. The first observation is that the global economy has expanded 30-fold over the last 50 years, from $3 trillion in 1970 to more than $110 trillion in 2024. Much of this has been contributed by openness in trade, investments, and the mobility of talents. Looking ahead, the growth will be shaped by digital technologies, industrial robots, and AI. Core competitiveness of a country will be determined by digital and AI capabilities and electricity power. The second observation is that it took 75 years for telephone to get 100 million users, but it took only 2 months for ChatGPT to get the same milestones. Currently, ChatGPT has 3.4 billion monthly users. Humane, the local Saudi AI platforms, just launched in May this year, currently have 3,000 monthly users. And AI investments will reach more than 4.5 trillion by 2030. That is about the same size of the German economy. So that's how fast and how massive the growth of AI. We're going to change not only the way we work, but also the way we live. The immediate risk of AI is concentrations of power and rising inequality, because AI currently only managed by a few firms and by only a few countries. So what can developing countries do? I think developing countries should focus on the 3 key pillars. First, build digital infrastructure and regulatory frameworks that allows companies to grow and to cultivate. Second, build a scaled AI economy. So it's not only internally, but also regionally. So that's something that I think Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, including in Asia, Southeast Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, have been trying to work not only domestically, but at the regional level. The third one is invest in human capital and R&D. I think it took China more than 40 years to become China what it is now, and the key factors in invest in educations, starting from STEM educations to provide the collaborations between universities and industries. So I'll stop it from here, then I'll look forward for the next discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights. And actually building on those ones, because I know quite a number of people in the audience are particularly interested in the topic, I would like to move to Mr. Hauge. And we will remain around this issue of artificial intelligence. And I would like to invite you to share your views about the way AI will change the future of industrialization. And even if Lily already touched a bit on it, also, what kind of reforms do you think that are needed to nurture the locally grounded AI ecosystems that can be supportive and conducive to industrial development? Mr. Hauge.
Thank you. I'm going to make somewhat of a controversial claim, which is that AI in some ways is not actually changing industry or the economies as much as many people think. Of course, AI pervades everywhere, and we're regularly updated about progress within AI. But I wouldn't say, for example, that it's a sector as such. We see it applied in many different sectors of the economy. And when we talk about real-world applications, and especially industrial strategy and industrial policy, the remedy for that, or the policies we should pursue, is still very much about developing productive capabilities, and something that UNIDO has been preaching, and rightly so, for many, many years. So when we think about industrial policy and industrialization, and how the future of industrialization is shaped by artificial intelligence, I would still like to emphasize that still very much, for those of us interested in industrialization and economic development, we need to first and foremost ground this in the development of the hard economy, semiconductors, robotics, computers, drones, etc. So, this is the first point I'd like to make. And the second one, and again, I said AI permeates all sectors of the economy, but as this has been alluded to briefly, we don't see AI applicable everywhere. There's a huge digital gap in the world, an AI gap. So in addition to talking about how AI is changing the world, we also need to talk about how can these things, these new technologies be commercialized and scaled up in areas of the world where they haven't been yet, and especially in the global south. So in sum, yes, AI is changing things, but we need to view this hype around AI with a bit more nuance and complexity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hauger. Actually, it's the dream of any moderator to have diverging views in a panel, so that's excellent. Thank you. I'd like to return to His Excellency. And we heard during these days a lot about global supply chains and the way they have been reconfigured for resilience, for transparency, and sustainability. Your Excellency, I'd like to invite you to share with us how, in your view, can development agencies, including UNIDO, help operate the shift in developing economies from low-value assembly to high-value green manufacturing and circular production cycles before new global standards lock in inequalities for the decades to come.
Thank you very much. Of course, this subject is, obviously has been and will be for the next few years the main subject, either bilateral or multilateral, with different countries, different companies, and taking that chance, not only from a policy point of view, but coupled with product companies, product engaging the private sector as well. So as we said even before, let's differentiate between what is an actionable manufacturing and tradable product versus a way of, or a culture that we have to build. The green, the manufacturing excellence is a skill and the tool and the knowledge that has to be transferred and embedded within our design of manufacturing facilities or how we manufacture products. Very conscious of our environment, very conscious of excellence, because it all translates to even, as you say, as we all see, that the product passport soon will be under a good mechanical way of transferring products between countries. This is said, now let's talk about how the supply chain in a life of a product can move between countries. First of all, a fair value chain creation has to be established. Even initially to be done softly, but a recognition of an organization like a UNIDO will be required. If not this year, it will be next year. If not, it will be in near future. Otherwise, there is no, I would say, mothership that everyone looks for to say, would that be considered within the framework of a fair value creation across nations or not, even if it is done softly, not within a legally binding agreement. In a way, normally product travels between at least three different countries. A country of a source, where a value creation has to be done to avoid what has been there in some nations that have been deprived from the utilization of their natural resource. The other one is an intermediate country where is another resource is available, that be intensive energy or availability of another natural resource that can reshape the product to a more useful one. And the last but not least is the country where it will use the product. Value creation has to be done there to avoid what the conflict that now we see between the two large commercially dominating countries. Easy to do? Yes. Easy to translate on a product level? Yes. If we slice it to even technology level or in the digital industry level, then it becomes a little bit more complex. This is where the human factor has to be done as part of that value creation. We talked about AI. AI needs someone to operate it. AI needs a data center. AI needs connectivity. AI needs huge amount of energy. It is energy-hungry industry. With the connection of satellite helps the access, for example, through Starlink or similar, to a data center, yes, it may help. With the availability of handheld devices that are affordable for nations, yes, it may help. But at the end, what would that mean? Means you are transferring knowledge to a user that you don't want to spend 2 or 3 years teaching them a skill that they can obtain to make a decision for a manufacturing, or a decision where they can plant or take care of a crop in plantation, or a manufacturing of a certain product. That does not affect the value chain creation, but it helps to make that decision, and you can monetize it very quickly. Where would the UNIDO help? In 2 major things. One, as I said, they are looked at defining where the fair value lies between countries, intervening with policies within a country to educate them how to make or strike that commercial deal. If a product is labeled a non-fair value, then a country of a receiver may decide not to receive it unless you have that fair value signature in that specific product. Would that be scary for some countries? I said, yes, maybe. For some companies, I said, yes, if it is not done well. But this is the only possible way to ensure that there is a sustainable supply chain across countries that is also fairly distributed between the value or the life of the product. This is one. The second is all of this nice talk, at the end of the day, needs funding. Someone has to get his hand in his pocket and pay money. This is, again, where the UNIDO can help, because if they are looked at as a trusted body, that they technically studied that product, they technically studied the value chain, then putting together a fund, a risk capital is much easier than a nation alone or a company alone. If we manage that, I would say, thank you very much, UNIDO. You have done a great job, and I think you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this very insightful thoughts. I'm going to ask now our 3 other speakers to do something that I fail to do systematically, and that's to be brief, because we are running a bit short of time, but I still want to benefit from your experience and wisdom. And I would like first to move to Mr. Gesteira. So if you can be brief in your answer. His Excellency was referring to reality and how to make sure that things happen. And I'd like to invite you to share with us in your view, how can region-specific industrial strategies move beyond generic policy playbooks to build future-ready industrial ecosystems that reflect the local realities and the resource endowments? So how to go from theory to practice, not an easy one. Mr. Gesteira?
With the red, okay. Yes, trying to be very brief. When it comes to endowments, I think we should make a distinction between natural endowments and creating endowments. And of course, when it comes to South America, for example, that it's the part of the world that I know better, I would say that we've tried before to cooperate in natural endowments, and it hasn't worked so far. I don't see why, if we insist with that when it comes to the energy transition, green energy and things like that, why it would be different? If you don't try to cooperate in terms of knowledge in a company's capabilities, I don't see how far it can lead us. So I think the more important thing is to find new mechanisms that we can work jointly in order to build supply chains that are cooperative among our countries. I would say that the same applies, maybe with little differences, to African countries and other less developed countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gesteira. I would like now to move back to Mr. Hauge first. We have heard a lot about energy transitions. These days, they can be framed as climate solutions, but at the same time, they might risk widening inequality, particularly in developing countries. And for that, we would like to hear from you what actions could or should governments and the international community champion to ensure a decarbonization process that empowers the global south, rather than excluding those that do not have the capital, the infrastructure, or the skills.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think we need to highlight that many developing countries, many countries in the global south don't actually have a decarbonization challenge. They actually have a carbonization challenge in some ways. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but what I mean by saying that is they have a challenge of creating more energy and, of course, diversified sources of energy, and the more clean energy, the better. But the challenge of decarbonization is not equal across the world. And I'm glad you brought up the issue of inequality. I think there are many things we can talk about, domestic and international, to sort of bridge the inequality gap between countries when it comes to the energy transition. I think, for me, it starts with stopping viewing countries in the global south simply as sites of extraction, right? We can talk about value addition in clean energy products and so on. When we talk about things that need to happen on the international stage, we need to more forcefully work for especially international trade and investment agreements that are open to technology transfer agreements and waivers on patents when it comes to clean energy. That's one important step of reducing inequality. Another important step, domestically, I think that's very important to embark on this transition. And let me be clear that embarking on the green transition from a developing country standpoint is not only about saving the world, it's also about becoming competitive, right? This is something we've seen increasingly over the last few years. And here, I think the role of public finance is very important, especially in clean energy. It's important everywhere, but especially in clean energy, because we've seen that in many instances, the private sector doesn't find clean energy profitable enough. And in countries that have really successfully embarked on this transition, we've seen a much clearer role of public finance, so a state that governs the market rather than the private market governing the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauge. And I'm really thankful to all the speakers because they are not only providing solutions, but also putting the emphasis on the financing and who pays for those to make them operational. Allow me to conclude with Ms. Lily Yang-in, again, please, brevity. What role should regional industrial corridors, common markets, and technology platforms play in accelerating that just and clean energy transition we have been discussing? And more importantly, who will pay for that? Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting questions. I think industrial corridors, common market, and shared technology can improve or accelerate energy transitions or green energy transitions through two channels. First is remove barriers, because like common markets and shared technology, it will accelerate through efficient movements, trade in goods, trade in services, investments, as well as movement of labors. That also includes in green energy transitions, transactions or projects. The second channel is through improve economies of scales. By having common markets, it's going to improve not only for domestic market, but also regional, and it could be even larger markets. So by having economies of scale, that's going to reduce productions of costs. At the end of the day, it's going to reduce prices that going to be paid by customers. So I think those two channels will going to improve or accelerate green energy transitions. Who's going to pay? Of course, it requires blended financings because particularly kind of a cross-border transactions or core cross-border projects, it requires a large amounts of money, and it requires a very careful management in terms of profit and investments and the risk. But the most important things, I think we all know and we should realize that this kind of energy transitions is not only for profit-oriented, but we should align this with sustainability and inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we conclude this panel, allow me to give the floor to His Excellency.
Just maybe one suggestion with the UNIDO and our colleagues to see the experience that we have done in the renewable energy projects that Saudi Arabia has done recently. What we have seen that the generation cost, and this is done by private sector completely, has been dropping drastically. We only introduced a policy to create one buyer instead of multiple, so at least the business model is protected. Government intervention only came at the tail end of the project. That model, I think, if can be also well captured to see all the elements of how it became successful, can be also shared. And I think I'm very confident it can be replicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And allow me to invite you to thank all our panelists. It's been a great discussion. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And with that, also, I'd like to invite us to watch a short video recording, The Role of Industry in Development, by Professor Sachs, who's president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Sachs, president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and I'm very grateful to be part of UNIDO's Global Industry Summit in Riyadh, and to first express my gratitude and full support for UNIDO's leadership at this absolutely crucial time. All economies around the world are undergoing deep transformation. We are aiming for a green and digital future that can deliver sustainable development. And the role of industry in this great transformation is fundamental. For all economies, there are three basic dimensions of the industrial role. One is to be incorporating and deeply engaging with green and digital technologies to convert energy systems to zero-emission systems, to be incorporating artificial intelligence and other digital technologies deeply into production processes. The second is to be producing the green and digital technologies. Economies all over the world need to be producers of photovoltaics, batteries, or parts of the supply chain, of critical minerals, of electric vehicles or their components, and for other critical dimensions of the green and digital economy. Economies all over the world will be hosting data centers. They will be direct participants in the supply side of these technologies. And there is a third dimension, and that is innovation. Innovation is not to be left to one or two or three economies. Innovation is necessary in all parts of the world, poor as well as rich countries, because the new technologies must be fit for purpose within the specific geographical and developmental and structural contexts of each economy. Therefore, we are on a worldwide industrial transformation, and UNIDO is playing an absolutely central and vital role in this. This transformation requires active industrial policy. We've seen it at work, often brilliantly. For example, China's Made in China 2025 program helped to catapult that remarkable country to the forefront of many of the world's key technologies. In Singapore, in Korea, in many other parts of the world, of course, there is very active industrial policy which is promoting the development of new green and digital sectors and actively promoting innovation. So I salute UNIDO's leadership. This meeting is of extraordinary importance. This year's report by UNIDO is superb. We are going to be in an age of very dynamic and very exciting industrial development, with UNIDO there as an essential partner for economies all over the world. I'm most grateful for the chance to share these brief thoughts with you, and I look forward to being together with many of you in various parts of the world in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
We thank Professor Sachs for his message. I will not try to capture the rich discussions and contributions we have, but perhaps before we close, first of all, I would like to thank you all for being with us this afternoon. And I would like to share with you 3 key takeaways, at least personally, I will take with me. The first one is industrialization will continue to play a leading role in development, but one must reimagine it for a new era of fragility and changes. Remember the initial message, beyond catching up. The second message I would like to share with you is that transformative technologies and green transitions will define competitiveness of the future. And the third one is that partnerships, governance, and finance are decisive for inclusive industrial futures. So thank you so much. And also, a last announcement, for those that are interested, you have copies of the Industrial Development Report that you can take with you, and you can dive into the multiple messages and insights that the IDR offers. Thank you so much.